Guys, welcome to the Saturday morning live stream. My name is Darrenese, and today is going to be about general Q&A. Any questions that you have about Power Apps, I'm going to try to answer on the fly, off the top of my head. I may not be able to answer all of them like that, but I'll certainly try. And in some cases, I could just get back to you on the answers, or I'll make a post about it. So as some of you may know, now I'm going to move Teams off of this. So I do have a Teams link in the description right now. So if you want to come on, ask a question in the chat, you can ask the chat on YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you're viewing this from, and I should be able to see it just fine. But if you have something that you would like to share, like you want to share your screen and ask me a question about a screen or a project, then I could make you a presenter here in Teams, and we could look at your screen and answer your questions. Just keep in mind, if you do come on Teams, this is all recorded. It's all on YouTube. So if you don't want your personal name or your photo, just configure Teams not to show that, or just sort of keep that in mind. Okay. So what we have up here on the screen is the Jumpstart Kit Lite. So what I wanted to do is create a template that was sort of simplified, didn't have too many features in it. Now this is freely available over at WAP. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with WAP, I believe there is a link in the description below. So the community, that's the community. That's the platform I use as a community to post videos, interact with students, and also provide resources to download as well. Okay. Now, we could use this little project as a starting point to answer any questions. So that's why I have that up. And then I also have some notes here about this live stream. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see this. And hopefully, let's see here. Hopefully there's no echo or anything. So if there's anything wrong with the audio video, let me know. I'm using both Teams and Streamlabs. So hopefully this will go okay. These last few weeks I've had a lot of technical issues, so hopefully not today. So I started to think about topics that people might be interested in hearing about. So if nobody has, like right now, I don't have any questions to answer. So something that we could talk about are guidelines, the guidelines that I would give to anybody developing a Power Apps application using SharePoint as a data source. And what I have here on this screen is pretty much the source code to a website that I have out there publicly. You can go out to powerplatformlinks.com. And what I have here, go to related topics, and we have all kinds of side topics here. Here's one about SharePoint. One of the things that I always recommend, now, according to a poll I put out there, and also from what I've heard from other MVPs, is that 70% of those that are creating apps and Power Apps, they're using SharePoint as a data source. Not because they want to, but because they don't have that premium licensing. So I think that's a topic that is fairly significant to go over. And even if you're not using SharePoint as a data source now, you might need to do that in the future. So if you guys don't mind, in the chat, in this live stream chat, type a 1 if you use SharePoint most of the time. Now, we're not talking about your preference. I'm talking about wherever you do your development at. Do you guys use SharePoint? Put down a 2 if you use Dataverse. and and also put a 3 for something other than those two. Now, it could be SQL Server. I've come across a very interesting data source, and it is called NocoDB. Now, for a long time, I've always wanted to have a data source that is external from my organization, my tenant, a particular environment that lives in a tenant. And I believe this is the answer, something like this. And it's got really good API support. It's very well documented. And you could use this as a data source. And I'm not sure if I'm logged into this or not. Let me, of course, Teams is in my way a little bit. Move this around. Okay. There we go. Now, the pricing on NocoDB, if you're interested in using something like that, is it's free. So just letting you know that. I'm going to open up their main page here. And what they were trying to go, this is open source too, by the way, guys. That's why it's so amazing. It's open source. You can have a custom API, a custom connector, tie into their APIs, and use it as a data source. And there's all kinds of things that you can do, like send a where clause, which that completely eliminates delegation issues, as long as you know how to query things. Now, what they're using as a backend is an enterprise relational database system called Postgres. And it's open source. I'm not going to say whether it's better or worse than SQL Server, but I would sort of put those two in the same classification as a big boy enterprise type of database system, along with Oracle. And I'm sure there are more, but those are SQL Server, Oracle are probably, and Postgres are probably the ones I hear about the most. And I got to keep an eye on all these notifications here. Okay, that looks good. All right. So let's go over to pricing, just in case you guys are curious. They're currently in beta, or it's called technical preview. And what they were trying to go for is compete with Airtable. And there is a way, even if you don't want, let's say they turn their pricing on and you really got attached to business or teams. And I would imagine they'd always provide a startup. So you could have up to 10,000 records. That's pretty cool. Usually Power Apps developers get a little nervous when we hit around the 2,000 mark, right? Because of the Power Apps limitation. Okay, so we've got Data is King says he uses Dataverse. Mark says that he uses SharePoint. Okay, very good. Minimize that. Okay, I just want to make sure everything is working properly because I'm managing a lot of things. I got 4 screens going on and concentrating on providing value and good content here for you guys, and also making sure everything is working. I'm keeping up with the comments, so bear with me if I'm looking around the room here. So if you guys aren't familiar with Airtable, it seems similar to Smartsheets, if you guys have ever heard of that. And it's a little, it's similar to SharePoint lists. Okay, so I put Airtable, SharePoint lists. the smart sheets, in the same category that NocoDB was trying to provide an alternative to. Okay, but this is actually backed by a really good database, Postgres, and I'm gonna hit the back button, and they're gonna pretty much show you what it's gonna look like here. So you can create databases. So it's a no-code database. So you essentially could create an application, no code, and you can have all kinds of views of a database table. And I'm sure as a view. Okay, so look at this. This is sort of cool. Now, guys, I'm just gonna talk. I'm gonna talk generally, and I'm gonna get back to SharePoint. Okay, but what's gonna drive this live session are any questions that you guys have, either Power Apps, or if you guys have any questions about the WAP platform, let me know in the comments. Um, and So if you guys have questions, we can change topic really quickly. Okay. So it integrates very well. Now, right now, you can integrate this with MySQL, perhaps another Postgres. There's Airtable, there's Excel, comma separated values, JSON. This is the NocoDB logo. So they have these things over here. Let's see if I can zoom up here. You see that intuitive UI? You can have data from a data set or table can be represented as a grid. And we just saw it listed as, I guess that would be the grid, what we saw up above. And then we have a Kanban, we have got a gallery, and also you can create forms on that data source. Now I would want to create the front end to that in Power Apps. But imagine something for a moment, guys. If a group of people, or let's say I had a group of customers and I wanted to provide software as a service, I could have this database sitting out there, maybe one for each client, or I could have specific fields in there that would separate out my clients. And then I could send them the MS app file, or I could deploy it for them. And they're using the Power Apps in their own tenant. And I'm using that same Canvas app in my tenant, but we're all pointing at the same database. If you want to, I'm just giving that out as an option. I'm not saying that that's a recommended best practice by any means, but you need to be able to have several tools at your disposal to match whatever scenario, whatever problem you're putting in a solution for. Okay. Now look at this. We have REST APIs. So that's where a custom connector comes into play. And here on the YouTube channel, we do have a great, it's one of my more popular videos. And it was myself and Kurt, we went over creating a custom connectors. We talked about APIs and went through all the steps of doing that. So if you're interested in this, you might want to sign up for a free account here and then go watch that video and set everything up. Now, if you guys are really interested in this, we could have a whole live stream where we build out an application using this as a backend. And do you see these three things? Here's make.com, here's Zapier, and this is something called N8N, I believe. And these are all automation tools, and they use webhooks. So if you want to know what webhooks are, just do a Google search on that. It seems to be another way, perhaps really simplified way of like an API. That's what I would classify that as. And I'm sure they will just add more and more things here. Now, this is open source, which means you could install it on your own server. And I do see your comment there, Mark, about WAP. So we will hop over there in just a moment. Absolutely. So you see here, Here's the grid view. Here's the Kanban view, a gallery view, and you can create a form. There's a calendar view, so there's endless use cases. I would agree with that. Um, and I think at some point right here, it says open source for one of the top 3 for no code. Ooh, I'm going to star that. uh, let's see, we got app flowy. Okay. There's that N8N I was describing. So it looks like it's number 4 now, but it's great. So what you could do is you could install this on a server. And you might think to yourself, I don't want to manage a server or spin up Linux or anything like that. Well, I've come across yet another thing, another service, and it is called Railway. And for $5, I think they have a. I wonder if I could go to a light mode. I'll probably have to log in to do the. Maybe it's at the bottom. Maybe not. Okay. So what this does, it allows you to install all kinds of things that are open source or something you have a container like Docker from, and you could have your own version of NocoDB running on their servers, and it seems like a lot cheaper than paying for a virtual private server out in the cloud. Okay. So I think I'll stop with that unless I see some questions about that. And okay, I see S Moore. He says one, so he uses SharePoint. So we're definitely going to come back to this. And an experimental archaeology with Grandpa. It says good morning. Well, good morning to you. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to WAP and show you the new platform that I'm using. I'll move some of this stuff around. Okay. And I am going to pull this down here. Okay. So what is WAP? Well, let's just go to wap.com. And it looks like I'm already there. I'm going to pull up an incognito window. And I'm going to say wap.com. And this is it. It's a platform where you can have courses, you can have chats and discussions. So it provides all of the features and functions that we had over with school.com, but it has even more. Now, they promote certain communities based on some criteria. But what you sign in, you're going to see the WAPs that you have joined. So here I am on a test account. And let's go over. So these are the WAPs that I have joined. So if you want to join the free WAP here, call it Learn Power Apps. And I'm going to provide that link here within the chat. Okay. If you guys want to join the free one, there's the link there in the chat. And we do have another question. Can you discuss data-driven apps versus Canvas apps and use cases? Absolutely. And what I would say to that is I do have, if I scroll up and I go into, where is Power Apps? Gee whiz. There it is. All right. And I have a page here called 3 Types of Power Apps. And I talk a little bit about this here on this particular screen. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well if you'd like to look at that initially while we look at WAP, and then we can dive more into this. And I would like to make sure I'm keeping this up to date. So these are my notes for this live stream. Okay, so SharePoint best practices. And we talked about different data sources you can use in Power Apps. And then we went into NocoDB. In fact, I might actually say .com there. And so we got SharePoint best practices. We're also going to talk about WAP.com. And I should probably provide the link right there. Okay, very good. And then I'm also going to share the link to this guy. Copy remote file URL. Okay, let's see how well that works. Nope, that does not work. So what I'm going to do is bring up, okay, I'm going to say link to powerplatformlinks.com, and that will be a to-do for me. Put in real link. Okay, and then after that, we have a topic for the 3 types of Power Apps. And there are the 3. Okay, Control S there. All right. So now we're going to go back over here to WAP. All right, so if you go into the free WAP, what we have here is, of course, the free community. And so this has some pertinent links. Now, WAP has an app, both for Android and Apple. And of course, you can access it through a website, through a browser. Here's our support email. So if you guys ever need help or support in any way, you could always email us there. And we have announcements. So for example, this morning, I put out an announcement for this live stream. So here it is on YouTube. And then here is the teams. And let's see here. Okay, very good. I'm keeping an eye of the comments there on Teams. Okay. So yeah, announcements. In fact, we did one just 5 days ago, similar. So if people in school or people in the community, they're having any type of problems with WAP, I wanted to go over and make sure everybody is able to get around and access the stuff that they need to get to. And if you ever need us to do something, you can go in here and submit a ticket. And for example, I could go in here, ticket name is I need a link to the Jump Start Lite. So at the very beginning of this live stream, I was showing you the Jump Start Kit Lite version. And say, where is it? And I'll hit create. So, so this is a Darren's a test account. So if you ever see this long hair guy from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, that is a photo of that guy. Okay, now we'll go down to free downloads and look at what we got. there's the Jumpstart Kit Lite. All right, so you can access it there. And the free content I have here, my plans are to have most, if not all, of the YouTube, the freely available YouTube content here, but it would be organized. It'll be categorized, organized, and it'll keep track of your progress. So one of the things I have a hard time whenever I'm trying to learn something and I find a great YouTube channel, it's like, oh, I learned a lot from that video, but what video do I watch next? It's like I wish they were ordered in a certain way so I could just start at the first one and just go down, because a lot of times training material is built on top of each other, in a linear mode. Hopefully, that if you when you go to school, you start off in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You just don't jump in and like, oh, that's an interesting topic they're teaching in the third grade class. I'm gonna go sit down there. No. So there's an order to it. Okay. So there's a lot of content that I need to bring over. I have a lot of work to do. To upload everything in here. And how WAP works, I could link things externally, but they prefer that you actually upload the video content. And if they're going to host my video content for free, so this is completely free for me. I have several different communities in this, and they're not charging me a thing. Where with school.com, they were charging me $100 per community. So that was $500 a month. Okay. Now, WAP has this thing called Spin to Win. You could go in here and hit the button. I haven't won anything yet. So close. So you can do that once a day or around 22 and a half hours, perhaps. Now, what do I have down here in courses? Yeah, that was okay. Yeah, I see what that is. So this is all that's included in the free, and I'm sure I'll be adding things a lot in these different categories. Now, what other things do we have? If I click on this little button here, okay, here is a feed, but here are all the WAPs that I'm a part of. So the next thing that you might be interested in is the Power Insiders group. Okay, so we have our own chat and we have a discussion. So there's a lot more included, but you can submit a ticket. Okay. So we have a separate place for just insider downloads in general. And we also have that light Jumpstart kit there as well, just for convenience sake. But guys, this includes, if I go here and if I scroll down, let's see here. Yeah, you can see on the side, this includes the ticketing system. And I used to sell that for $500. Now this is just a $97 membership. To get in, there's no contract. You can cancel at any time. And you get all the files, the code for the ticketing system. And as you can see, we have 37 videos. And this is something that we had started 2.5 years ago and went up to all the way up until number 34. So I would go live once a week. So over 34 weeks it took to create the course. And then we've sort of rebooted this as I started this group. So you get the newer version of it, or any new content, and anybody that's purchased this in the past would have access to that as well. So you get access to all the workshops that we've done. And I'm just trying, if you think about a workshop, we do these every Friday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And you get all the recordings and everything. So And don't pay attention to the year here, because if you imagine I've got 50 workshops every year, this is just my attempt at maybe breaking those up a little bit. So we have Kurt's practical labs and assignments in there. You get the crash course, you get the bite-sized videos, you get a preview of the accelerator. Here's all the workshop recordings, and perhaps these two need to be merged somehow, or this one should be a child of this one. So you get access to all the Jumpstart kits, and that is the benefit to that. Okay, so I'm gonna keep my eye on the comments here and see if there are any more questions specific to WAP. Okay. So I'm scrolling around. Let's see here. And while I'm waiting for any specific questions or comments about WAP, I'm going to put in any more topics that are coming up in the chat. Okay. So experimental says, in a new table in Dataverse, there are many fields that are added automatically. Yeah. And SharePoint's like that as well, although it's not very obvious. It creates that title, but it actually creates quite a few more. Can you review those fields, and when would you use them? Okay, I like that. I'm going to put that here. And I'm going to say Dataverse. And here, general topics of discussion, as you see here at the top. SharePoint, WAP. And if we're going to go into detail, I'll create a header there. Okay. So that's a question. Also, Data is King says, I've highlighted part numbers using template fill in a gallery. Okay. So I'm going to enter that as well. That's a good question. Data is King. Yeah, let's go in here and say Canvas Power Apps. Fantastic. Okay. And I'm going to copy the follow-up to that, or the second part of that. Very good. Okay, so the three types of applications that we have available to us. Whenever you, let's see if we can, I like to make this full screen. That would be nice, huh? There we go. So there's a place, if you try to open this up, if you go to Power Apps and you say, hey, I want to start a new app. Let me bring something up here. A new tab. And if I go to the Create, you see we got Home, Create, Learn, and Apps. And this just gives you many, many different ways of creating apps. There's all kinds. If you go home, boom, you got Copilot wanting to help you. You can start with data. You can start with the page design. You can start with an app template. You could click Create, and it's trying to help you out. You could create with an image. You could take a picture of a napkin of where you drew a screen, and it could create an app from that. I have a video on that. So I'm going to say blank app, and it gives us these three options here. Okay. Now the question came in, like, hey, what's the difference between Canvas apps and model driven? Now notice the headings here. it does say Canvas app, and it says Canvas app down here. Up here it says blank app based on Dataverse. Okay, I find that this is a little misleading, if you ask me, because I can create a Canvas app that uses that's based on the Dataverse database, you know. But what this is a model-driven app. Okay, so we're going to talk more about these. I just want to talk briefly about Power Apps portals, which is the third way to do this. And I just immediately assumed when Microsoft came out with this Power Pages, it's like they took Power Apps portals and rebranded it and gave it its own name, Power Pages. And what it was in Power Apps and what it is now is a way to publish an external facing website, and you're locked into using Dataverse for that. And there is an exception to that, as you can imagine, which is you can have virtual tables in Dataverse, which means that you can create a table in Dataverse that brings in an Excel spreadsheet or a SharePoint list. And I'm sure you could access those other data sources through Dataverse. But so if you ever hear Power Apps portals, think Power Pages. Okay. And from that standpoint, Power Apps, it comes down to these two choices. Now, a Canvas application, you have full control over the canvas. So I'm going to start a new app here, the same way that I had up on the other screen. I'm going to click Create. Okay, my new Canvas app. Now you have two choices, and this is just the orientation. So do you want it to be portrait oriented or landscape? And I almost always pick tablet. I feel like it gives me the most flexibility. And to be honest, if somebody is using your app on a phone, you just tell them, hey, turn it sideways. That may not be, I don't know, a feasible option for the screens that you're developing, but it's actually worked well in the past. Or you can set up your application to be fully responsive, and it will just respond to whatever dimensions it has to deal with. The host in which it is running. And you see here it says Canvas app. I'm going to click Create. Look at this. Here's your application. You have a blank canvas to paint on. So let's say we want a button, and we don't want the button up there. We want all of our buttons at the bottom. And maybe we want a header or not. You see how much control and how many choices you have? We could say, I normally go with blank, but since I'm demonstrating things here, I'm going to say a vertical gallery. Okay, well, we have a listing now. And we can do all kinds of things. Let's bring over a container. Now, just to share my feelings on the topic, I love Canvas apps because as a software developer with over 25 years of experience, I like having full control, and I know how to design an interface, and Canvas apps allows me almost to do anything I want with the app. Where a model-driven app is like a boilerplate type of an environment. I'm just going to change a few things up here. So you could put some text boxes. You could put a form in here. So a user could be running this. They could click on a record, and you can have all the details show up here. And this button could be a save button. There could be a button beside this that says cancel or back. We could have a menu on the side or at the top that goes to different screens or goes out to a website. Tons of flexibility. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to this. Okay, so I just showed you the Canvas app. Over here with the model driven is you build a database inside a Dataverse. Let's say we create a table called customers. And, it keeps track of their first, last name. We've got their phone number, their email address, all the pertinent information. And it's like, okay, I want to create a model-driven application now. Now, will we get something as flexible as this or as this? No. Does it look bad? No. You just don't have as much control. Now, you can embed a Canvas app inside of a model-driven application, so that's nice. But a lot of times, model-driven applications are built or created alongside of Canvas apps. Okay, so you might create a model-driven application for back office personnel. Okay, so let's say you have a company or an organization that has hundreds of users, and you want to build a Canvas app and you also have a model-driven app, and they both look at the same data, but you'd have most of your users be using the Canvas app because it, I don't know, really needs to be user-friendly, and perhaps they're confused easily, or if you've been a software developer for any amount of time, you have this idea in your head of what a user is, and they never do what you expect. Okay, so you need to be able to have a lot of control here. But let's say I'm in information technology. I'm in the IT department, and I'm creating an app for the company. I would probably create it as a Canvas app. But let's say the people in IT need to be able to do special things like add, edit, remove drop down or items out of a drop down or something like that. They would have elevated privileges, and I could create a model-driven application. The upside of model-driven application is very quick. It's very fast to develop in. And when I say fast, I'm talking about development time. Performance-wise, I would say they're about the same. I've never heard that there's a drastic difference between the two in performance for the users. Now there are some built-in offline capabilities in this, and of course it's always built on Dataverse. And in the Canvas apps, they've added that if you're using a Dataverse data source, they've built in some offline capabilities as well. And they're always adding new features, okay? So by now you probably have a good idea of what a Canvas app is, okay? And your screens don't have to look like this. You could go over here to add a new screen. And if you want a responsive design, look at this. Okay, here we could put a header, we could put a menu over here, and the main content here. That is actually what I used when I built this Jumpstart Lite, the Jumpstart Kit Lite version. Okay, and what I said here is we've got a listing of data, and over here we can edit, we've got to cancel, we can create a new record and submit. Okay, and yeah, it was taken from a layout like this that is responsive. So for example, if I run this, what do I mean by responsive? Well, if you go look at it on a phone, look at this. So now the menu's at the top. Okay, I can click on another, that's another screen, and it looks nice in there. Now, what if we turn the phone sideways? This is what it would look like. You click on a record, and then it would show you the right side. Okay, so I had that built in to this particular Jumpstart kit. And you could also test out different tablet sizes, see what it looks like on a tablet. So here, the application is aware if it has enough space to give us that menu. And this menu does collapse. So if the user wants to allow for more screen space, they can just click on the hamburger. And hamburger is actually a technical term for applications or even websites. These three lines that typically will either show or hide a menu, or it's indicating that that is a menu. Okay. And as you can see, we have a lot of templates to choose from. I normally don't use any of these templates. I always use my own, but some of these aren't bad. And there's all kinds of things you can do here. A lot of flexibility, as I've said before. And I'm going to keep an eye over here in the chat, make sure that I'm up to date. All right, well, before I get back to the comments, let's talk about a model-driven application. I'm going to click Create here. All right, let's give it a name. My new model-driven app. And I'm going to click Create. Okay, here we go. Now, I think what I'm going to do is go full screen. And this is the designer for this app, this model-driven app. And I believe if I click on pages again, you can toggle this menu so it's not taking up so much room. And we can do the same thing for the right side. So this is what our model-driven app will look like. Well, this doesn't look terribly different from what I just showed you in Canvas apps, right? Can I add buttons here? No. Can I? What I'm going to have to do, and I'd recommend that you have something in mind for this. So here I have an account table, and there are all kinds of database tables that are created for you in Dataverse that comes from the Dynamics 365 world, like the account. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add that table to the app. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of this. And let's see. I'm going to run this, save and continue. Let's see what comes up here. And we see a preview back here of what it's going to look like. And I wish it would take up the full space, but maybe I've got to zoom in here or something. So now it added something to the menu. Okay. Now there's quite a bit more to Dataverse. This is just sort of, I'm trying to show the differences. There is quite a bit of cool things that you can do with Dataverse. So I don't want to minimize the versatility and the utility of a model-driven application, because I'm sure a lot of organizations use this. Oh, here is a fit. Nope, it didn't take up all the space there. But you just have less control. And because I don't really care for model-driven, I don't do much video content on it. We do have a 5-day boot camp that I've done in the past. It's available for the on-demand over at WAP, where we spend a whole day on Dataverse and model-driven applications. So we do have that content, but it's not as exciting for me. So there's a lot of ways you can configure things, okay? But a lot of these things you don't have a lot of control. Like, here's a filter button. Well, what if I want the filter button up here or down at the bottom? Okay, you're not going to have too much control over that. But do realize if you get somebody that works in model-driven apps as much as I work in Canvas apps, they could probably show you all kinds of things that are actually impressive. I've seen a lot of impressive things done with model-driven applications. So hopefully with this contrast, let me know. Let me see who asked this. Experimental. Experimental, do you have any more questions? Anything I can follow up on to make sure your question is fully answered there? Okay, so experimental just asked, in a new table, Dataverse, there are many fields that are added. Okay, let's go into data. And I'm going to get out of full screen mode. And I'm at 175. Okay, that's probably part of the problem there. I can create a new table. And let's start with a blank one because I want to make this very obvious what experimental is talking about. Now, I do love that they've now provided a sort of like a ERD diagram where we can see tables that relate to each other. So that's very nice. But what I don't like about this is if you create it a different way that I would recommend, and I'm about to show you that. You see how it's already named our table here as table 1? And look at the first column. It's called new column. Well, is that our primary key? Is that our main column? What exactly is that? What am I going to put in there? And I could edit it and I can change the name of this, but I don't like to do that because if it's ever created, there are a Dataverse database is actually a SQL Server database, and it has like features and things built on top of it to provide more stuff. That's all the Dataverse value that you get with a premium license. But you can actually connect to a Dataverse database with SQL Server Management Studio. And if I created this and it was table 1 and this said new column, well, those columns get etched in stone in the SQL Server database, which I wouldn't want. Now you can change what's called the display name, and that would work fine. But if you ever look at it, you've got some weird stuff going on there that sort of stays that way. So I'm going to hit back, and I'm going to leave and discard that table. What I like to do is just go into Power Apps. And if you want to get to Dataverse, guys, all you have to do is on the left side of the screen, you click on Tables. And let's see here. There we go. That's better. And here are all the tables that they recommend. If you want to see all of them, you click on All. Okay. And I would say that there's hundreds of tables here that are created by default. For me, I like to start with a blank slate or at least a template that I create myself. This is how I recommend creating a table in Dataverse. I go over here and I go with this advanced properties. Now, don't let the word advanced throw you off or intimidate you, because I think it's actually simpler. Okay. Instead of being confronted with an ERD diagram, you've got the grid down below and you've got all kinds of things going on. Like, where do I start? What do I do? You want to come up here and give your table name a singular name. And so, for example, I want to keep track of, I guess, customers. Now, this is something else you have to keep in mind with Dataverse. You almost need to check to see, like if I had tasks, I want to create a task manager. Look at this. There's already a task table. And it will allow you to create another table called task. You know why? This is just the display name. The actual name is this. And what you'll find out when we create a new table, it will create like a little prefix. So there'll be 2 tables, and then you try to go over, let's say your Canvas app, and you try to bring it in, And you think you're bringing in your task table, but it brings in the Dataverse task table. So that's a weird thing. I try to warn people against. In fact, if I have to work in the same Dataverse environment or Power Platform environment with other developers, what I'll do is I will prefix my tables with the application name or an acronym or an abbreviation of that. So I'm going to go back into advanced properties. So in this case, I'm just going to say my customer, or something that would be more appropriate would be our customer. And let's just say R is an acronym for the name of my application, our customer. And why I say singular? Because it wants a plural name. Now, if you're in Canvas apps, guess which one you're going to use? You're going to use the plural name. But the table name, or at least the display, and see what it's doing here? It's calling it the display name. The actual name, if you go down in advanced options, SPL. What's SPL? Well, I created an acronym for my company, Superpower Labs. And there's and see that it's using the singular name. So that's going to be the name of the table in SQL Server. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're creating a new table, it'd probably be good if you put in a description, but that is optional. You can enable attachments. You guys know how in SharePoint, when you create a list, it creates a field for attachments. So you're able to do the same thing here. Now look at this. This is a little confusing, in my opinion, and it calls it the primary column. Now, is that the primary key? Is that the unique? Is that a column that ensures that every value in it table-wide is unique? The answer is no. What this means is, if I had a database table called our customer, and it had records, and a lot of times why you want to give your database name a singular moniker or name is that we're describing what one of the records would be inside that table. Okay. So if I wasn't prefixing, this would just be simply customer. Now, if I had a drop-down list in Canvas apps and we're allowing the user to select a customer, which one of the fields in this database table would we want to display there? That's the question you want to ask yourself whenever Dataverse talks about a primary column, okay? Because that's how it uses it. It's how it uses it in model-driven applications. And you're gonna, like a drop down, well, you are sort of restricted just to use one column. Another thing, there are things you can do in Canvas apps to sort of get around that, and one of them is to do an add columns. Let's say you got a first name and last name. You could bring them together. You could create a calculated column, but you know how in SharePoint you create a new list, it creates a title field. This is sort of like the same thing, okay? And you can go in here, you can see it's going to be required. If you don't want it to be required, I'd probably keep it as required. Max character count. Well, in SharePoint is 255. They have it up to 850 now. Okay. It used to be 100 as the default. So that's interesting. Okay. All right. I'm going to hit save, and we're going to go over all these columns that it creates for us. Okay. Here's our database table. Here is our data. So I'm going to say Darren, boom. I'm going to say Joe and Mark. Okay, so we have 3 records in here. What is this? Does this mean we have 18 more records? No, we have 18 more columns. We have all kinds of stuff in here. Okay. Um, Let me, do I have any SharePoint in here? I'm going to bring in SharePoint because there are some things that are similar. If you create a new SharePoint list, I'm going to show you all the columns that it creates for you. And I'm going to look at like maybe this thing here, the CCC. Here we have my SharePoint list. Okay, let's bring that in. And what's nice about having it in here, you just click on this ellipsis, these three dots, hit edit data. Now this doesn't edit the data, it just brings you to it so that you can edit it. And of course, I've added some of my own fields here, but let's go over here and try to add a new column and we'll say show or hide. Guys, these are all the columns that SharePoint creates. Now, I almost always make this ID visible because it's the primary key column. It's like an auto incrementing number there. And you might want to see when it was last modified or created, who modified it, who created it. There it is, created by. But there's all kinds of other stuff in here. And if we modify the view here, if we modify the view, edit current view, there we go. You can see, I'm hoping that these are all the same columns. I have some Power Automate flows that will create a SharePoint site. It can create all the sites that you want. And it's actually faster than using the SharePoint interface. You can create lists very quickly. You can create fields. And what I learned is there are tons more columns that are created for you than just this. And I think those columns are columns that SharePoint uses in some fashion, and they're not exposed to us. But if you use some of the connectors, I think what I had to use was an HTTP request to SharePoint, and I was able to get it all those underlying columns. So I just want to let you know that it's not too odd that Dataverse sort of does the same thing to us. If I can find the right tab here. Okay. Now what I like to do, if you want to look at all the columns, I went and do this. This is just if you want to see columns here, just like we over in SharePoint, we have a view. Now I'm going to click on columns, and they're listed like this. Now, over here in SharePoint, if we were to go to list settings, see how it lists it all like this, and it's not showing us all of them. We know there's more there. Okay. Over here in Dataverse, when you click on columns, hey, here's all the columns. Okay. So I'm going to select all of them and see if it gives me a count anywhere. I don't see a count anywhere. But what I'm going to look for, there is our primary name column. It's the main user-friendly text identifier for your record, oftentimes a name or a number. The value in this column will be shown to users. So that lines up with what I was saying. If you want a value to appear in a drop-down list for a user to select one of the records out of this table, that's what you want to use that for. But I'm looking for the primary key, the unique identifier. And you'll know it's different for every table because it creates a column with the same name as the table. So this is sorted alphabetically. So I'll go down to the O's, and here's our customer. Now, what's the data type? It's unique identifier. It's going to be a GUID. Okay. So if I go back to this screen we were just on, and I guess I didn't mark Joe, and I don't know why I didn't save it before, but you see it says data saved now. So you can't just type and expect it to be saved. It's almost like you got to move to a different row. All right, so I'm going to go look up a column, the same name as our table, our customer. And I like to see that because you never know when you might need to troubleshoot something. I'm like, okay, I think this is Darren, but let's go over here and see. Okay, so that is the primary key. This is what will show up in drop-down lists, especially in model-driven applications. And why do we have all these other things? Well, a lot of tables, a lot of times when you create databases, you want to know what's created, who created it, who last modified it. So these are common things that you might want in a table, or what Microsoft wanted to have in Dynamics 365, and it sort of has come over. Now, it doesn't mean it's all about D365. You can have teams within an environment, a Power Platform environment. You can have an owning user. So these things can be populated by this system. You have status, like we could make a status of active, inactive. And if I click on that, that's exactly what we have here, active and inactive. And if they were made inactive, we could put the reason they were made inactive. And it's only providing one. I would sort of expect there to be, and maybe it wants you to populate that. So yeah, it just puts some stuff in there for the system. Now, in contrast, if you're working with a SQL Server database, no columns would be created for you. And what I do is I create a model table that's got an auto incrementing ID. It might have a GUID in there. It would have something like a title or a name that I would use for a drop-down list. And it would have, even before I actually add any columns specific to that domain or that entity, that database table, like customer, I would also put in the created when, modified when, and by for those two, and maybe have like a comments or notes column. But if you like a fresh new, start from scratch with your data, give SQL Server a whirl. Now, if I were over here in NocoDB, I'm going to show you how common this is. Okay, I could create a new table, and I'm going to call this one my customer. Create a table. Oh, look at this. It already created a column for me. Title. Okay, well, let's look at all the fields. Okay, well, we have a title here. Let's put in Darren. Okay, so we have one record. Now, if I go in here, you don't see title here. Oh, look at this. Show system fields. So this particular system, this NocoDB, creates the created at, updated at, and an ID. Okay, and now you can see those here. So it's a little common. Okay, now I'm going to go back to our talking points here. And of course, the more I talk, the more parched I get. Okay. So we've covered that, and experimental. If there are any more details, let me know in the chat, and I'll circle back on that. And I want to go through and add any additional questions and make sure this document is updated for you guys so you know where we're going. And perhaps after the live stream, I can create little chapters. So if you're not interested in NocoDB, you can, fast forward to a different chapter. Okay, Data is King says, I have highlighted part numbers using now I do have that there. Very good. So this is, what I'll do is I'll prefix this. Scroll down. And I will say Data is King. There we go. And I'll also put a little dash there. And we have experimental. Okay. Experimental says, can you review best practice for setting up your own environment with multiple different projects and solutions? Sure. And I would put that down as general Power Platform topic. Very good. I think I'm going to get rid of that guy so we can look at this. Okay. And Experimental says, and keeping them organized. That's a great question. All right. Experimental says, thank you. Well, you're welcome. And then we also have Sadiq who says, hi, Darren, please add me to the free Power page. Okay, so that link should be down there. And if not, let me make sure that that is available here. Copy that link there. And hopefully this comes up in the chat because I see that you came from LinkedIn. So I'm hoping that came up in the LinkedIn chat. Okay. If not, I'll go back to LinkedIn and add it for you. Okay. And just so I remember, oh, here we go. Yeah, I need to do a to-do there. And here is, so if you go to wap.com, it's learn-power-apps, and you'll get there. And it's completely free. Okay, don't charge for that. Okay, Muhammad has a link, which I'm going to look at. Oh, I think that's probably spam. So Muhammad, you're going to be blocked. Okay. Bargov, hopefully I pronounced that right. Let's see here. I don't have a coding background, so for complex apps, I would always prefer model-driven, so I don't have to design the UI and easily make changes because we all know the original requirements. Okay, well, something that I'm gonna put this over here as a topic that I'm gonna cover. One, two, three, four. Ooh, that was good. What it was gonna suggest. Okay, and I'll replace that with that. BHARGAV. Okay, I'm going to hit Control S there. Okay, so this is what we're working with. Now, keep in mind that both Canvas apps and model driven, they're not meant for develop. It was created and designed for citizen developers, people that work outside of IT that are trying to create solutions. Because us guys in IT, we're in the business of saying no, not yet, or hands off, access denied. um, which that's a little bit of um, a pessimistic view of IT. But I've worked in IT my whole career, and a lot of times I get told no for a lot of things, and it's like, hey, I need a developer environment, like a playground or a sandbox, you know? Yeah, but why do you need full control? Maybe I want to explore the new features. But I don't like telling users. I don't like telling the business. A lot of times it's referred to inside of IT. The business, we're talking about all the other departments or the whole, organization as a whole outside of IT. Well, the business needs this or that. So it's meant for you. Okay. So Canvas apps is, and what I should probably say here, I'll put it in the notes. Canvas apps is low code. And I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase, oh, Power Apps is low code, no code. Well, which is it? Is it low code or is it no code? Well, the low code is Canvas apps, which means you don't have to write a lot of code. And then the model driven, if you don't want to deal with any code, you'd go with model driven. However, let me pose a scenario to you. Okay, so we've already started to create a model driven application on one of these tabs. Here we go. And this is based on accounts. Okay. Now, what were to happen if I were to go over here and say, I want a new Canvas app, but I want it to be based off of Dataverse. Okay. I'm going to click on that. Now, stay in that mindset of like, I'm somebody that has no coding experience. I'm going to go over. That's funny. I don't see Dataverse here. I would expect it to see here. And maybe, no, that's customer insights. Okay, here's more of them. And I'm going to go look for Dataverse. And it's always been visible. I don't know why. If you ever want something not to work, do a presentation on it. And you have like a PowerPoint or you're showing your screen or whatever, and like, okay, guys, this is how you do something. You click on it. Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, right? And if you've presented a lot or taught a lot of classes, you're very familiar with that. And I'm going to log in with the account for this particular tenant. Yes. It's funny. Sometimes I'll tell you, contact your administrator. I'm like, I am the administrator. All right, so I want to create an app based on this table. Okay. Now, can I select more than one? Doesn't look like it. If I hold down Control, no. There is a way to get around that, though, that we can talk about if you guys are interested. But I've selected accounts, the same table that we used in that model. Oh, look, it's going to build something for us here. And I'm going to update our document over here while that thing is working. And this is right here. Requirements that rarely change. Experimental says, this is great stuff, just what I needed. Awesome. Glad to hear that. You guys, that's my ultimate goal, is not just to talk about what I want to talk about. It really doesn't matter what I want to talk about. It's how it's going to help you guys. If I was in here just rambling on about what I want to talk about, there would be no channel. There'd be no subscribers and nothing. Okay. And then Bargov says, question. do you know where I can find a JavaScript example to perform multiple CRUD operations as documented here? Now, I don't see a link there, but I'm going to put it in the notes. And I know we've got stuff that we can talk about up here, but that was like if nobody has any questions. Down here is, I'm going to say, general topics of discussion. And I'll paste that there. Oh, well, this is interesting. So Copilot is giving me, so this might be the link that you were talking about. By the way, this code editor that I'm using is VS Code, and I'm using Copilot or some extension that gives me suggestions. So that link looks like this: performing operations using the web API. Okay, that would probably either need to be a workshop, because this looks like this is very involved, and I'd have to dig into this. If I was going to present something on this, I'd have to prepare for it. Things that I have yet to have done yet, I'd have to sort of prepare. But I did provide the link there, and you know what? I tell you where you can find examples. That's what essentially what you're asking, where I can find an example. Absolutely. I know exactly where that's at. Go out here and we'll look for the little GitHub icon. Now I have a GitHub repository called PowerFX Snippets. Oh, also there's the link to my free WAP. But if you want to get at the code that I use, if I want to add something rather than writing it from scratch, like controls. If I ever want like a big text box and I want to almost have like a little code editor, maybe I've got some HTML, I'm allowing the user to write HTML before they send out an email. Well, I might want this YAML. I just paste it in there. It's going to use Courier New, which is a monospaced. I think that's what it's called. Each character takes up the same amount of space, whether it's a period or a W. W's, I think, are the widest, and a period, of course, would be the slimmest, which is what you'd want if you're doing any type of coding. And it takes up the full screen minus a 20 pixel margin all the way around. So I could copy this if you want to see this in action. Of course, it won't work with a model driven. But this would be a good place. So I could right click in this container, paste the code, and there we go. We got a little code editor there. Now, if I clicked over here and made this invisible, you see that it would, I could do all kinds of stuff here. So this is YAML code, but I could say, hey, I want to create an HTML document for an email. You do your coding like that. So there are a lot of times when I need to use that. A lot of times more for testing than anything, because let's say I've got something over here like a button, and I made the button look exactly how I wanted it to look. And I said color dot red. I really like that. And I changed the text, and I changed the corners, the border radius and everything. I'm like, I want to use that everywhere. Well, you go over here, copy code, paste it in here. Oh, I didn't mean red. I meant maroon. And guys, that's what I do to provide for you guys these YAML code snippets. Okay. And I got a little sidetracked. I get excited about GitHub, guys. What I'm going to do, I star a lot of repos, a lot of repositories, which is a place where people put a lot of code, okay? Or project. That was a weird description I just gave, but You see I got Power Platform. I've got all kinds of stuff. I wish they would just sort it alphabetically. Okay. And I hit the limit of how many star categories. So I've got Power Apps and Power Platform. Now I am going to go over to Power Platform first. And look at this. If you see, Microsoft has got a lot of repositories out here. If you want to create your own Power Platform connector, you might want to use that. Now, if I'm going to, I'll do a Control F here and I'll do a search for JS. I'll do a search for JavaScript. Okay, this is a fellow MVP. He has a YouTube channel. I think his first name is Drew, but I might be completely wrong on that. But look, he's got Power App samples and tutorials. But I'm looking for, here's a bunch of Power App samples from the Power Platform community. They've got a lot of good stuff. But here's one from Microsoft, Power Apps tools. Let's do a search for PCF, PowerCat code components. Now, PCF controls code components. I used to believe that you would do them in C# or whatever language you want to, but I looked into this and it looks like you would need to use TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript. Okay, so let me say, yeah, just PCF. See what else we have. PowerCat Creator Kit. Now look at this, guys. Down here below, I've got 5 pages. Let's go up here to the top. Let's just do a search here. And those were just the ones that I starred. And I'm going to go up here and look at the question. And it was, do you know where I can find JavaScript example to perform multiple CRUD operations as described here? So let's say Power Platform JS and probably API. And what I do is I sort by most stars. And I'm going to take out JS. I mean, there's so many things that has JavaScript in it. If you look long enough, you'll find things. Now, if I go back over, I think we're having better luck if I go in here and just do Power Apps instead of Power Platform. Okay, there's Lisa Crosby. She's a fellow MVP as well as Christine. Matthew Devaney's out here. I'm sure Rez is out here. So be sure to do a search for your favorite content creators that have to do with the Power Platform or any type of coding, and you'll find all kinds of really cool stuff. And if I see anything that's Power Platform related that has value, I star it. Now what I'm going to do, I was wanting to sort it. It's not going to allow me to. There's a chart component. Power Apps project template. Power Platform VS Code Lab. A hands-on lab for Power Platform tools and VS Code. Now this might actually be right up what you're asking about here. The various ways to install Power Platform tools, okay. And that might actually be an extension for VS Code, might be what that's looking at. So I'm not gonna waste any more time on this because I don't have a precise answer for you, but this hopefully points you in the right direction. Okay, now remember we try to create an app. This is not what I wanted. Because this is the old app generator. So you've got an app here. You didn't have to write any code, and now you have a Canvas app. Okay. There is a different way of doing this. So I'm going to go back and not save. So the question was, hey, because I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, I guess I should go with model driven. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to say I want to keep track of all of my companies. I got to be careful here because there's already a contact table. There's already an account table. And I can't say tasks because that's already out there. Now we could rename things. Okay. I'll say accounts. So we could do this and it's going to create a new table for you. So let's go in here. And there's all kinds of ways of creating apps. So while that's working, I could go over here to tables. And if we really wanted to use this account, I'm hoping that it gives me, let's go into the table. Look at this, create an app. Oh, it's going to be a model driven app. Okay. Okay, using this table. Apps. Okay, so it's going to show you all the apps and flows that use the table. That's useful. Okay. Not really what I was looking for, but interesting to see that there. Now I don't, hold on here. Dashboards, charts, views. Yeah, most of these things have to do with model driven. But, you know, if you're over here in SharePoint, what I like about the SharePoint integration with Power Platform, look at this. Integrate, Power Apps. Now you got to be careful because there's two ways of doing this. Okay, there's customized forms. So whenever you add a new record, it's going to give you this thing. You can actually customize that with Power Apps. And it would actually pop up whatever you create there. So that's what customized forms would give you. If you want to create a whole app based on that SharePoint list, look at what happens. And sometimes these things take a while loading up. So I'm going to go over to, okay, import a SharePoint list. We can import, start from blank. I wonder if I said import data, I'd like to use the account table, the existing account table. Let's see what it can do for me here. I'm not able to do that. Okay. Well, let me let's create one from blank. And we could call this not table 1. Let's call this my accounts. I don't want to conflict with the other one I had there. And it needs to be singular. Okay, so I'll save that. So we have this thing called new column. Let's see if we can edit that and just make it name. Okay, so we've got that. And now look at this. So we could create more tables and have this ERD diagram, create more columns. But let me show you how easy. Now this is going to be Dataverse. Save and open an app. Don't ask me again. Okay, now we're going to wait for that to come up. All right, so the way that I did this, it's going to, yeah, brought up my, so this is the old thing that we've had for years. That's not what I wanted to show. what I wanted to show you, hopefully, is what this is going to give us here in a few seconds. Okay, was there anything else that I was waiting on? And I think we're good there. So keep in mind, this is a Dataverse table that we just created. And we are automatically generating a Canvas app based on that table. So this gets you up and going, and the thing works out of the box, you know? Okay, I'm gonna call this demo app, my accounts demo app. I'll save that. It's just one screen, very simple. I want to say, hey, I've got a new account. His name's Darren. You click on this check mark. It's going to save it. Boom, we have one record. Now, check this out. Let's say, well, I really wanted to use the account table. Well, just pull it in. Notice that it's plural here. And we're going to bring that in. And then I'm going to remove my accounts because it only has one field. I want to have multiple, all those fields. And now we've got some problems. So what I'm going to do is go over here, and everywhere where it says my accounts, I'll search for that and I'll replace it with accounts. And I'm going to match whole words. And we have 13 replacements. And let's see what's going on up here. So apparently the account table does not have a column called name, which sort of surprises me. Now we could go over and find out what it is. It's probably this account name. Accounts, display name. I don't see any errors. Okay, something that we need to do is on this form, we need to tell it, hey, we're not using that other guy. But if you sort of refresh it, so I just clicked on the data source again, and it's going to refresh because it has different columns. And now you don't see anything, which is no problem because we can go into fields here. You can also get at it over here, okay? And let's remove that. And then we add fields, and we can say, yeah, give me the account, all this type of stuff. I want to see all this. Hit add. Maybe these are the fields that you only, replace the data cards. You would add in all the fields that you would want to allow the users to edit. Okay. So don't shy away from Canvas apps just because you don't feel like you're a coder or you have to be a coder in order to do this. And we should have lots of, okay, so we need to go in here, SPL name, we got a search box. And let's do a search on account name. So that's the primary column. Now look at that. Now we have a fully functional CRUD application. And what happens, it almost looks like I select one and then deselects it. But when I select it, it was scrolling up. Now that was the end of them. So if I click on Litware, it just scrolls it so it's at the top. And I can edit it. Now I'd probably replace that check mark with a little save, like a little floppy. Of course, the new generation comes up, has no idea what a floppy is, but they just call it the save button, I guess. And then I could cancel the editing. So there you go. You have a fully functional app. And keep in mind that you could go in here and say, hey, I need to keep track of my customers, my inventory, this, that, and the other. And it's going to create a bunch of tables for you. You can modify them, create the app, and then you're going to have all kinds of screens. You're going to have a menu system. So don't be intimidated by the Canvas apps. I actually find model driven a little bit more intimidating than Canvas apps. I don't know. All right, so what I'm going to do is go back to our notes and the questions, the chat here. Would big tech companies buy our apps? Well, you phrase something in a way. I'll put this down as general here. And I'm going to say SDE topic. Okay. And I'm going to put this link for WAP. Oh, I already have it up there. Look at that. Okay. Would big tech companies buy our apps? The simple answer is no. Why is the answer no? Now, I could, but the answer is no because big tech company. It depends on what you mean by big tech company. I would say any big organization probably won't buy your app because a large organization, even a medium-sized organization, is going to have their own IT department. And if the IT department is large enough, like in a big organization, not only are they going to have a developer, they're probably going to have teams of developers. And they might hire Power Apps app creators to create whatever it is. It's a low code, no code. So they might think, hey, that's a great idea that SDE topic came up with. He has an app out here. Well, we'll just sort of recreate it or customize exactly how we want it. Okay, so that's my initial thought. Now, if you want to sell your software, big companies would pay for it if there are a lot of features and it would take their developers or their IT department a long time to develop it. So that would be an exception. Or maybe their IT department, they might have developers, but none of them is well versed in Power Apps. Okay, well, there you've got a use case there. What you want to do is look at Microsoft App Source. And I really wasn't looking for Perplexity to answer that. Here we go. If you want to sell your stuff, you go here. Okay. Now, if I'm looking for a Power Apps application, do I see anything? Let's see all the well, let's go up here to apps. Here we go. Microsoft 365 Power Platform. Look at all this stuff. If you just need a flow, you need a Power Page. No, look, Power Apps. We have, look at this, Power Apps, Power Platform. I'm going to take out Power Platform and just have Power Apps. I guess it took that. I guess they both have to be in there. How many do we have? 1,315. Okay, so let's say we're looking for a ticketing system. Let's see if it will, we can search on that. Okay, I'm going to go up to the top and say, yeah, I'm going to search within the current filters and I'm going to say ticketing. And let's see what comes up here. So if this large organization uses Dynamics 365, this is D365 sales. They probably wouldn't want to create, something that's got a lot of features that took somebody a long time. So there you go. And you can register yourself on AppSource. I believe you have to get your app certified, which means you have to adhere to a lot of rules in order for Microsoft to accept your app to be listed and or sold here. You can provide free apps if you want. You could also have like a freemium, freemium. So you have a free version, and if they want more features, then they have to purchase a different version of it. So that's what I would say to that is you might want to take a look at AppSource. So I'm going to put the link here within the notes. And there we go. appsource.microsoft.com. All right. Tony A says, I create apps that have to go through computer system validation for a regulated environment. Okay. The new Copilot search, filter, and sort pop-up invalidates my apps. How can I stop Power Apps from ad? Okay, I'm going to put that. I assume that's a Canvas app, Tony? Is that? Tony A. Okay. There's this question. So those apps have to go through computer system for regulated environment. I've heard of this. I have an accelerator student that does a lot of work for some government entities, and this one agency, they had a Power Apps app that managed all the Power Apps apps. The new Copilot search, filter, and sort pop-up invalidates my apps. Well, Tony, I'm going to be honest here. Without seeing exactly what you're working with there, I like to see some visuals. You can email me at support@superpowerlabs.co. And I'm going to put that at the top here. Okay. Or you can just go into the free WAP and the email address is listed there as well. So I'm just going to put my answer here. I would need more info to understand the issue, especially maybe some screenshots, or better yet, even like a little screen sharing video like loom.com. So you can create free videos with Loom that will record the screen, and you can sort of describe what's going on there. Max, hey, thanks for the I don't know what these are called, super likes. The 1000 ARS. Max says, I am always afraid about the security and creating security roles and assign them to people or groups. Is there a step-by-step or best practices so I'm no longer afraid of this part? That's a great question, Max. I'm going to go down here, and I would put this into governance. Okay. Now, Max, is this a situation that, like, are you using Dataverse? Is the Dataverse really the central data source that you're working with in this case? Right here. And if that's so, what you need to do is interact with the Power Platform security system. Now, how do you get there? When you're in Power Apps, I think it's Advanced Settings or the Admin Center, one of those two. So we'll see. Yeah. So we'll bring this up, Dynamics 365, and you can go into security. Okay, and you have security roles, you have users, you have teams. Now, I don't really specialize in the governance aspect. Maybe eventually, after I run out of topics to talk about with Canvas apps and everything, I'll start going over more governance type of things. But let's also take a look at the admin center, because there is some stuff in here that I think coincides with the security and the groups and everything. So I could go in here and manage. I could pick one of these environments. So I'm going to provide this link, which should get you there, as long as you have access to it. So I'll provide some resources here. And let's get the other one. Now this would be different based on the environment or your organization. And something else I'm going to get you is a good link to start from, okay? Okay, so we've got that one. And see if I can find some good stuff. I think I found a good link for you. Okay, so you can go to this link. So this is learnmicrosoft.com, and this is the central place for security and governance documentation. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. As you can see here, okay, this is where you go to configure it. This is where you can go to learn more about it. But I appreciate the, what do you call it, the super like or the donation or whatever. I appreciate that, Max. What is delegation? Okay, I'm going to add that. And I think I'll put that in general topics here. Now, what is delegation in general? In or out? Well, let's talk about outside of Power Apps. Delegation is a task or some work that you give to someone or you give to something like a program. SRINIVAS, there we go. What is delegation? So let's say I am an executive of a large corporation and I don't have a lot of time. I might hire an administrative assistant to read all my emails, let me know which ones are important, go pick up my dry cleaning, go pick up a birthday gift or an anniversary gift for my wife, or do all kinds of things. I would be delegating. I would be asking someone or, to go off and do something for me. Okay. So in the context of the Power Apps or the Power Platform, I love this. Okay, there we go. It gave me the official link for this. Query limitations. Delegation and query limits. So that is a decent link that you could look at, but you're probably looking for the answer that I would give. Delegation is actually a pretty big concern, especially, Canvas Power Apps, because if you're in a Canvas Power Apps application, and right here we're dealing with the accounts. Well, what happens if we have a lot of records in here? Look at this. Data row limit, 500 records. That means this database, this Canvas apps application can only have or query 500 records at a time. Now you can increase that. The maximum is 2,000. Now Microsoft's always changing things up on us. So I'm going to put in a really big number, hit tab, and it's going to tell me I can only do up to 2,000. Okay. And like, oh my goodness, well, I got millions of records in my database. No big deal. Because are you wanting to display all 2 million records in a single screen for a single user? I can't imagine so. Okay. So don't let that bother you. How much data do you want to display on the screen at once? Okay. As long as the data source can handle the query and give you precisely what you want. And there's some cases where it can't. So it's going to say, I don't know how to do this query. Here's all the data that I have. You figure it out. Okay. So you got SharePoint lists as a data source. You have Dataverse as a data source. And you have SQL Server. Now there are some other data sources, like I showed you NocoDB, but those are the three. I would say probably mostly those two, SharePoint or Dataverse. SharePoint isn't so good at handling delegation queries. Now it's decent, but this search feature, it's not going to be able to do a search. So if you're wanting to search on a field and provide text in here that the user could type in here, you know, and the amount of records in the data source is 2,000 records or less, it's going to work fine. But over here, we could use a different function called filter and use a starts with in this query. And as long as the users don't mind typing the first character first, like in this case, I typed lit for litware. And if I typed in where, I still get it. But if you change it with the filter, with the starts with, then it wouldn't show up. Okay. Now, what you can do is you can create a Power Automate flow that you could sort of get around that. You could loop through, let's say we've got 5,000 records. You could query 2,000 at a time and have a whole collection in memory for a user. You could do that. But anything over 10,000, now you could have much more than 10,000 in a collection. I think it's dependent upon the memory that's available in the user's browser or the device, okay? Because Power Apps can run on phones and tablets. It's going to come down to the memory, okay? Now, I've created a collection that had 100,000 records, and I didn't have a problem. There wasn't much data. It was just a single column, and I was just creating it with the sequence function to do that. So that's another way. Now, so what you want to do is you want to find out. I'm going to bring up this link here and show you guys. And I'm also going to put this up with, where did I put governance? No, delegation. I thought I had. Oh, there it is. Okay. I already have that link there. Okay, so this is the link that came up for me right within VS Code. So if you want to read this, talks about the 500 records, increase it to 2,000. The delegation, okay, so they're including a fourth data source, Salesforce. So if you're working with Dataverse, you'll have a lot less delegation issues. SharePoint, you'll probably have the most out of these. And don't expect, if you're trying to use an Excel file as a data source, don't expect any type of help with delegation. I would recommend never use that unless you're just trying to import the data. But look at this. We have functions and operators for Dataverse. And we can bring up SharePoint. So if you're using these operators, in your query for Dataverse, you're going to be fine. Now, if you're going to use the is blank on a choice, and I recommend never use choice. And I have a whole video. If you do a search on YouTube for Darrenese choice columns, you'll find it. Okay, so search on a choice won't work. Search on a number won't work. Search on text would work. Okay, so you need to look up if it's going to be a problem or not. And here it is for SharePoint. I'm gonna provide these two links for you guys. There's one. There's two. Okay. And I'm going to show you guys that here. Okay, so what is delegation? So these are the three links. Now, what I'm going to do here for you guys is I'm going to commit this, sync the changes, and go back. So you guys see that. And then there's one more thing to do. To push that out to the website so you can see it. Now, do I have, yeah, I have it up right here. Okay. So if I go into related topics, content creators, Darren, and I think we've got it named by the date, if I'm not mistaken. Live streams. Well, that was January 8th. Where is the one that I just uploaded? That should be up there. Live streams. And it's not in a, well, it should be there. Now, sometimes it doesn't show up right away, so I have to hit refresh. There we go. 1228. Okay, so all the notes that I've been typing up are available here. And I'm going to share this in the Restream chat. Okay, there we go. So if you have any follow-up questions on the delegation, let me know. And we'll take a look at that. All right. And it looks like you guys are, oh, I see Daniel Christian. Hey, Darren, dropping in to wish you and your family belated Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. Keep doing what you're doing. It works. Awesome, Daniel. Thanks for stopping by. And if you guys haven't checked out his channel, you should. Yeah, there are lots of guys like Daniel that I look up to in the Power Platform community. He's a fellow MVP. Okay, what is delegation? Answered that. And then 3 types of apps. Yeah, low code. And Bargov says, sorry, I've split up the comments here due to limitations on number of characters. Okay, yeah, that's no problem. And Experimental says, have you ever added an interactive chart in Canvas app? Example, flow curves for impellers, PSI. You know what I would recommend for that? And I don't recommend this probably as much as I should, because Canvas apps has charts, but they are fundamental. They are simple. Okay. I could create a new screen here and insert a chart. And we have 3 types of charts. And they're a little simplistic, but what you said here is an interactive chart. Now, what type of events do we have? We have no event properties. What's an event type of property? Properties that start with the 2 letters on. like on select, on start, on visible, that type of stuff. If you're looking for something fancy, what you want to do is say Power BI. You do the report in Power BI and you embed it in your Canvas app. But you'll need a workspace, you'll need a dashboard, and you'll need a tile that's defined within Power BI. Okay? Or just an XY graph where you change one value. Oh, that would be easy. Absolutely. I love your question. Okay, so I'm going to add this to Canvas apps question. Because this is actually going to be fun. Just the fact that you added on that little bit of information, because you'll be surprised with what you can do. Okay. So I'll save that. And you know what I'll do? I'm going to show you some content that I have that's out here for the accelerator students. So I've got probably thousands of hours of content that's not available on YouTube. It's available to I essentially have 3 different offerings. I got all the free stuff like the free WAP, you know, the YouTube channel, and there's tons of stuff there. Then I have a paid membership on WAP that is $97 a month, and there's tons of value there. There's all kinds of different courses and stuff. And then you have the accelerator program, which is more like an apprenticeship. You know, you work with me every week. We've got group calls. We come together. We talk about your projects, and there's a lot involved with that. And one of the things that I did for them is I broke down. Let me bring this up here. The accelerator program, and I put it here within practical exercises and labs. And what we have, I created helper content. So this demonstrates exactly, I believe, what you're talking about here. Okay. So I start off talking about X and Y.
Guys, let's talk about a topic that I don't think
this. Make it full screen. And some people are having a hard time understanding the X and the Y of something and how to get at the, let's say, the right and the left portion. Okay. And I talk about all those things. Okay, so I start off really basic, and then we talk about centering. And this one actually,
right. So consider the controls that are on the screen.
Okay, so I put sliders here on the side and the bottom. And as you move the sliders, this whole rectangle would move up, down, the X and the Y. Okay, so hopefully that's what you're talking about. And then after that, I took it one step further. Yeah.
Hi guys, take a look at the screen here. We've taken it one step further.
And I did some collision detection here. So say if you're writing a game, or I'll go to the end here and sort of demonstrate it.
Isn't that helpful? I'm going to make this file.
And if it hits the no-go zone, then it lights up in red and says bad, you know. So absolutely, yeah. If you want to control the X and the Y, and I've got an accelerator student that has created a whole project where he almost created a whole flowchart type of an application. And he's got some trigonometry in there and some really cool stuff. So absolutely, there's a lot of stuff you can do. But if you got a fancy Power BI chart, you know, use this, or you can link them off to the chart, you know. But if you want it in the Canvas apps, use this control here. Okay, I'm going to go back to our notes. Barkov says delegation is also an initiation making a good low code developer. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's almost like an intermediate type of topic. It doesn't have to be complex, but sometimes it is. And I've got a whole workshop that deals with that. Um, Let me pull that back up, and I'll go over to workshops. And yesterday was our 36th workshop, so we do these every Friday. And let me see, delegation was one of them. Delegation is right there. It was number 15. And it was a 4 to 5 hour workshop on that. So I go over a lot of stuff because there's a lot of things that sort of come up. And even with SharePoint, I'm always able to make things work in a feasible way so that it's no problem, but I wouldn't be able to go into all that, of course, right now. Because as you can see, it took me 4 or 5 hours to do it before in a workshop. Jopa. What about fetch XML? Does this go along with data source, queries, and performance? I've never tried to do that. I think the delegation stuff, it depends upon the connector, I would imagine. So a SharePoint is going to give you a tabular type of data. JSON can be returned as one big blob of a string. So I could imagine XML would come over as one big blob of a string or text. So it's not really in terms of records. So you might be able to bypass that. But talking about performance, if you had a million records, I'm sure it wouldn't work. you know. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. But I don't have anything specific about XML. I've been doing a lot of stuff with JSON and have had really good results with that. But I've never tested the 2000 limit. Again, it comes over as one blob of a string. So I don't think that 2000 would apply to that. Okay. Now, let's see. Okay, so I'll bring up the topics here. So these are the things that we went over. And really the burning question in everybody's mind is, which video should you watch next? Because YouTube will put up a suggestion here, what's best for you based on what it knows about you. And then also put up a playlist over here on this side. Now, if you're attending live, you're not going to see this, but in a few hours or in the next 24 hours, I'll have those up. And hopefully I'll see you guys in WAP where we can interact there. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.